For more than a decade, Ed O'Neill lived as the man everyone loved to hate. To the world, he was Al Bundy, the defeated shoe salesman, the man trapped in a house full of insults and broken dreams. But behind that cynical smirk was a story few fans ever knew. A story of exhaustion, regret, and moments that blurred the line between fiction and reality. When the cameras stopped rolling, Ed O'Neill wasn't laughing. He was watching his own life become inseparable from the man America laughed at every Sunday night. And now, decades later, he's telling the truth. The story that never made the tabloids, and the one that changed how he sees everything. The audition that changed his life. In 1986, Ed O'Neill walked into a casting room in Los Angeles that would unknowingly define the rest of his career. He wasn't the studio's first choice. Not even close. Fox executives wanted a familiar name for their daring new sitcom about a miserable middle-class family. But when Ed slumped into a chair, let out a long, defeated sigh, and mumbled his first line, the room went silent. That small gesture born from watching his own uncles after long factory shifts in Ohio became the moment the creators Michael Moe and Ron Levitt saw Al Bundy come to life. Even then, the network hesitated. Ed wasn't a star. He was a theater actor with a few film credits and a face nobody could place. Weeks went by with no call. He assumed he'd lost the part, but the producers fought for him, insisting that his weariness, his timing, and his quiet authenticity were irreplaceable. When Fox finally said yes, the wait was immediate. Ed wasn't just playing a character. He was carrying the entire experiment of a network trying to prove itself against giants like NBC and CBS. If Married, with Children failed, it wouldn't just end his career. It could sink Fox's early ambitions. Ed threw himself into the role completely. He studied the script line by line, making every sigh, insult, and sarcastic comeback feel real. But what he didn't know then was that this realism would come with a price. The exhaustion of playing a man who'd given up on life began to blur into his own reality. And before long, the family that was supposed to be fictional started tearing itself apart behind the scenes. The recast and the burden of believability. Most fans assumed the Bundys were so in the pilot, were there from the beginning. They weren't. When Married with Children first filmed its pilot episode, Kelly and Bud Bundy were played by two different actors, Tina Casper and Hunter Carson. The set felt off from the start. Ed O'Neill later recalled that something about the family dynamic just didn't click. The chemistry wasn't there, and the humor fell flat. He could feel it in the room. Every joke landing with the wrong rhythm, every silence heavier than it should be. Then, just weeks after wrapping the pilot, Fox executives made a brutal call. Both kids were fired. The reason, according to Ed, wasn't just performance. It was compatibility with him. The show lived or died on the illusion that this was a real family, and the studio believed the energy around Ed needed to feel authentic. Tina was too polished, Hunter too restrained. It was a painful decision. Ed later admitted he felt guilty for what happened. Those actors had filmed the pilot, celebrated, and told their families they'd made it, only to get a phone call that erased it all. They were gone before the show even started, he said quietly. Then came the replacements. A 15-year-old Christina Applegate walked into the audition room and nailed the role instantly. She was sharp, funny, and carried that strange mix of innocence and rebellion the creators had been desperate for. David Fino, just 12, gave Bud Bundy a sly, desperate humor that balanced Ed's darkness. Suddenly, everything worked. But while the on-screen family finally clicked, off-screen pressures started mounting. The show was filmed in front of a live audience, every episode a public test. Each laugh, or lack of it, was a judgment. And as Ed soon learned, carrying both the humor and the heartbreak of Al Bundy every week would take more than just good timing. It would take a toll on his mind, his body, and his relationships for years to come. The stage that never slept, the hidden toll of the live audience. Every week for 11 years, Ed O'Neill stood under the heat of studio lights, performing for a live audience of 300 to 500 people. The laughter was real. So were the stumbles, the silences, and the pressure. Married with Children wasn't filmed in a safe bubble with canned laughter. Every scene lived or died in real time, and Ed felt that weight more than anyone else. He once admitted that when a scene failed, you could feel the disappointment in the room. When the audience laughed, it was electric, he said. But when they didn't, you wanted to disappear. The exhaustion was relentless. Some episodes stretched deep into the night as the cast repeated takes, trying to chase the perfect rhythm between laughter and silence. If the crowd laughed too long, timing collapsed. If they didn't laugh at all, directors stopped everything to reshoot. Ed's body began to pay the price. He was doing constant physical comedy, falls, fights, slapstick chaos, all meant to look effortless. But by season 5, his back was in constant pain. He pushed through bruises and fatigue, knowing that if Al Bundy ever looked like he wasn't trying, the entire illusion would collapse. He later said that some days he'd drive home barely able to move, only to return the next morning and do it all again. The live crowd also made certain moments excruciating when jokes about Peg's laziness or sexuality went too far. You could feel the discomfort ripple through the audience. Katie Siegel once told him she dreaded certain scenes, not because of the script, but because doing them in front of real people felt like being stripped bare. Still, Ed insisted the audience was what made the show feel alive. It was unpredictable, messy, and brutally honest. But that same energy also exposed every weakness, every missed beat, every piece of humanity the cast tried to hide. And it was during these long, sleepless weeks that cracks began forming, not just in the Bundy household, but between the people who brought it to life. Feuds, regrets, and the fallout with Amanda Bears. For years, fans of Married with Children speculated about tension between Ed O'Neill and Amanda Bears, the actress who played Marcy, the sarcastic neighbor, constantly clashing with Al Bundy. Ed denied the rumors for a long time, but in recent interviews, he finally admitted the truth. There was a feud, and it lasted years. It began in 1989 with something that seemed harmless. TV Guide released a cover featuring the show stars, but only Ed and Katie Seal were on it. Amanda Bears and her on-screen husband, David Garrison, were left out. Ed knew about the cover beforehand, but said nothing. At the time, he thought little of it. He was the lead. Katie was his co-star, and that's just how the industry worked. But to Amanda, it was a betrayal. She felt erased from a show she'd helped define. He could have said something, she would later tell fans. He didn't. Ed admitted he regretted staying silent. "I should have spoken up," he said. "That was a mistake." But by the time he realized it, the damage was done. The atmosphere on set changed. Conversations grew short. Eye contact disappeared. The professional rhythm that made the Bundy Rhodes dynamic so funny now carried an invisible tension. Things got worse in 1993, when Amanda got married and didn't invite Ed. She later said it wasn't out of spite. She just wanted a peaceful day, free from the awkwardness of their strained friendship. Ed took it personally. "That height," he confessed. "I thought we were family." From then on, they barely spoke outside of scripted lines. Even scenes together became uncomfortable. A strange irony for two actors who'd made audiences laugh with their constant bickering. Katie Siegel once tried to mediate, but both sides refused to give in. Years later, Ed admitted his ego played a part. "I should have understood how she felt," he said. "I didn't." That silence between them became a ghost that lingered long after the cameras stopped. And as the seasons went on, Married with Children became less like a comedy and more like a battlefield where every joke hit an unspoken wound. Boycotts, backlash, and the day everything changed. In 1989, Married with Children faced a kind of firestorm that could have destroyed any show and nearly did. It started with one woman, Terry Rakolta, a conservative activist from Michigan, who caught an episode she found offensive and decided to fight back. She wrote letters to advertisers claiming the show was corrupting American families. Within weeks, major companies, including Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble, pulled their ads. For Fox, which was still a young and unstable network, it was a nightmare. They called emergency meetings, debating whether to tone down the scripts or even cancel the show outright. Inside the studio, panic spread. Writers whispered about censorship. Crew members worried about their jobs. And the cast, who'd always treated the show as a satire, suddenly found themselves accused of promoting the very things they were mocking. Ed O'Neill remembered the confusion vividly. He said he first heard about the boycott from reporters on set, not from the network. "They told us not to say anything," he explained. "They were afraid if we defended the show, it would make things worse." Katie Seal later called that period terrifying. She feared her career might end before it began. Christina Applegate, just 17 at the time, became a target for moral outrage. Critics accused the show of exploiting her character's sexuality, even though she was a teenager following a script written by adults. What few fans realized was how that controversy changed the show forever. The writers didn't soften the humor. They sharpened it. They learned to slip subversive jokes under the radar using innuendo and wordplay instead of blunt shock. Ironically, the boycott turned into the best publicity Fox ever had. Ratings skyrocketed. People who'd never heard of Married with Children tuned in just to see what the fuss was about. Ed later called it the greatest marketing campaign we never paid for. But behind his humor was a trace of bitterness. The controversy made him realize that success always came with a cost, and sometimes that cost was innocence, loss, regret, and the scene he refused to film. By 1991, Married with Children had survived controversy and built a cult following. But behind the laughter, tragedy struck. During the show's sixth season, Katie Sagal, who played the sharp-tongued Peg Bundy, was pregnant, and the writers decided to weave her pregnancy into the story. The Bundys were finally going to have another baby. It seemed like the perfect next chapter. Then everything changed. In her 7th month, Katie lost the baby. Production stopped. Scripts were torn apart. The storyline was rewritten overnight into a surreal dream episode where all imagines Peg giving birth only to wake up and realize it never happened. To the audience, it was dark comedy. To the cast, it was unbearable. Ed O'Neill admitted that he didn't know how to handle it. "I didn't know what to say," he said years later. "I thought staying quiet was better than saying the wrong thing." But silence wasn't what she needed. Katie returned to work soon after, still grieving, and had to slip back into Peg's teasing humor while everyone on set avoided the subject. Ed said that was one of his biggest regrets, not being there for her in the way a real friend should have been. Around that same time, another moment pushed him to his limit. The writers proposed a scene that Ed felt made Al Bundy genuinely cruel, crossing a moral line. He refused. Al could be miserable, angry, pathetic, but not evil, he explained. If you made him mean, people would stop laughing. After a heated argument, the writers relented and rewrote the scene. It became one of the rare times Ed used his authority to protect the character, proving that beneath the sarcasm and insults, Al Bundy was still somehow human. Those two experiences, loss and defiance, changed how Ed saw the show. The man known for cynical humor began to understand just how fragile everyone behind it really was. And from that point on, the laughter on set never felt quite the same. The end no one saw coming. After 11 seasons, Married with Children had become one of television's most recognizable and controversial sitcoms. But in 1997, without warning, it was over. No farewell episode, no call from the network, just silence. Ed O'Neill found out in the most awkward way imaginable. He was back home in Ohio, staying at a quiet bed and breakfast, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Outside, a car pulled up, newlyweds still in their wedding clothes, trailing cans, and a just married sign. When the groom saw him, he shouted, "Oh my God, it's Al Bundy in Ohio." Ed smiled, congratulated them, and thought nothing of it. But then the bride said something that froze him. "We're so sorry about your show." "What do you mean?" he asked. The groom looked stunned. "You don't know. It's on the radio. You got cancelled." That's how he found out. Not from Fox, not from a producer, from two strangers on their wedding day. Ed later told Christina Applegate about that moment, and she laughed in disbelief because she found out the same way secondhand. "A guy who knew a guy told my assistant," she said. "They never called us." After a decade of carrying the network's most talked-about show, the cast had been discarded without so much as a goodbye. No wrap party, no last script, nothing. Ed admitted he felt angry at first, then hollow. "That's Hollywood," he said quietly. "You give them your best years, and one day you just don't exist." Christina Applegate would go on to say that despite everything, she was proud of what they built. But for Ed, the ending marked something deeper, a reminder that the world had laughed with Al Bundy. But no one stayed to say goodbye to the man behind him. The irony wasn't lost on him. In the end, just like Al, he walked away alone, quietly without applause. Years later, Ed O'Neill would find a kind of redemption. Modern Family gave him a second act, a chance to play Jay Pritchett, a man who finally loved his family instead of fighting them. It was everything Al Bundy wasn't. Warm, grounded, even hopeful. But it also made Ed look back at Married with Children with a different kind of understanding. He realized that Al Bundy wasn't just a joke. He was a reflection of frustration, broken dreams, and quiet endurance. Millions of people saw a bit of themselves in him, even if they'd never admit it. If you watched that show and thought Al was someone to admire, Ed once said, you missed the point. He was there so we could laugh at how hard life can be.